The central banking system was established. The second thing they had to do was be able to find a way of collection so that the central banking system could receive that money back. It's no coincidence that also in 1913, Colonel House went down to the floor and in a very meek voice said, "It appears that the 16th Amendment has been ratified." Then he took all of his information and hid them away, and it wasn't challenged until 1984. In 1984, Bill Benson traveled all over the United States, picking over 16,000 pages of certified documentation. In 1985, they published the book. In 1986, Bill Benson submitted himself to courts to challenge the court because he, at that time, was not paying taxes. The court, or he felt very comfortable about going to court with the book, The Law That Never Was, and the 16,000 pages of certified documentation. He didn't realize that the moment he got into court that the judge determined that he could not use the 16,000 pages of documentation because he did not pay his taxes in 1982, and the evidence that he had available wasn't even available until 1984. Bill Benson went to jail for a term of 4 years. 1 month ago, Bill Benson was released. But he wasn't released because his term had expired. He was released because his court case was overturned. Okay, so we've submitted to you a fraudulent act based on the IRS on whether or not the 16th Amendment has been ratified. This is enough to help you to become a non-taxpayer legitimately, ethically, morally, and patriotically. However, I've got another story that I'd like to tell with you, and this is a story that was presented to us by Billie Murdoch. Billie Murdoch lives in Salt Lake City. She's a very wonderful lady, but she also was the target of the IRS, and they proceeded to go against her. And in fact, they claimed that she owed about $300,000. Billie Murdoch went to the IRS to answer a summons, and at the time she went to the IRS to answer a summons, she took in with her all of the books that was necessary, she was required by the summons. She sat down at the IRS office and proceeded to get ready to talk to the IRS. The IRS said, "Do you have all of the books?" And she says, "Yes, I have all of the books you requested." She says, "May I see them?" She says, "Well, before you can see my books, I would like to make sure that you have the authority to see my books." The agent, of course, says, "Well, of course I have the authority. I'm an IRS agent." She says, "That's not what I mean. You see, according to Title 26, the only person who has the right to look at my books is the Secretary of the Treasury of the United States or his delegate. And I want to make sure that you are a delegate of the Secretary of the Treasury of the United States." He says, "Well, of course I'm a delegate." She says, "Well, then you have your delegation of authority with you, don't you?" And he says, "No, I don't carry it on me." And she says, "Well, then that's all right, I'll wait." They postponed the meeting for 2 weeks. During that 2 weeks, Billie Murdoch went to Washington, D.C. Her job at that time was to find a copy of the delegation of authority from the Commissioner, from the Secretary of the Treasury to the Commissioner of Internal Revenue Service. She knew she could find it 2 places. One, either the Department of the Treasury would have it, or she could find it in the Federal Register. She went to the Department of the Treasury and asked for the delegation of authority, and they said, "We don't have it, but I'm sure the IRS does." So the next morning she went to the IRS. By that time she found the number. Now I'm going to put the number on the board because it's important. The number is 150-37. And she asked the IRS for 150-37. The clerk said, "All right." She left. 25 minutes later, she came back and she said, "We've got it, but I can't give it to you, and I don't know why." Billy Murdoch left from there and went to the Federal Register. And in her research, she found that she could not find 150-37 in the Federal Register. She came back to Salt Lake City to answer a subpoena, to answer to a judge why she should not be held in contempt of court for not answering a summons by the Internal Revenue Service. She wrote a brief explaining how she tried to find the delegation of authority, and 36 hours later, the IRS dropped the case. Now, this is a good story, isn't it? Except that, as a journalist, I can't just accept the story. So what we try to do is we try to recreate what she was attempting to do. And I think we've done a pretty good job. I have here Treasury Order number 150-37. Bill?
Please.
You have 150-37. Would you testify that that's Treasury Order number 150-37?
Yes, March 17, 1955.
Produced March 17, 1955. The first two paragraphs are from the Secretary of the Treasury giving the authority to the Commissioner of Internal Revenue Service. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So now we have 150-37, except for one thing. It wasn't published in the Federal Register. The Department of the Treasury decided that they had better do something about that, so they decided to produce another delegation of authority. Now, Dave, would you testify that this is a Treasury Order number 150-37?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and would you give me the date of that Treasury Order?
April 22nd, 1982.
April 22nd, 1982. It was signed by?
Donald Regan.
Donald Regan. Now we know that Donald Regan was the Secretary of the Treasury in 1982. So everything looks perfectly legitimate except for one thing. This order also was not filed in the Federal Register. Now, if it's not filed in the Federal Register, how much authority does that have? None. In order for it to have any authority from it has to be published in the Federal Register so that we can go to the Federal Register and read any Treasury order from the executive branch of the United States government. If it's not published in the Federal Register, then it's as if it doesn't exist. However, they found that this was also a problem, so they decided that they were going to publish another one. Bill? And what's the date of this Treasury Order number?
April 22nd, 1982.
No, that's the date of this one right here.
No, that's the date of this one right here.
You mean we have two Treasury Orders?
Two
April
different
22nd,
numbers.
1982? Dave, what is your Treasury Order number?
150-37.
Bill, what is your Treasury Order number?
150-10.
Oh my goodness, we have two Treasury Orders, both produced April 22nd, 1982, with two different numbers, 150-37 and 150-10. If you will notice that it is word for word, however, it's not copies. And Dave, would you read the last paragraph of your Treasury Order?
This order supersedes Treasury Department Order number 150-37, dated March 17, 1955.
Okay, and would you read the last paragraph of your Treasury Order?
This order supersedes Treasury Department Order number 150-37, dated March 17, 1955.
Which one are we going to comply with? Or does it make any difference? Dave, yours was signed by Donald Regan.
That's right.
Right? Bill, yours was signed by?
Donald Regan.
No, it wasn't.
Actually, it's not signed.
No, it's not signed.
Another trick.
Yeah, that's another. You're catching
No
on,
problem.
Bill.
Always get the good.
Just type.
Okay, so yours wasn't signed, right?
No.